All right, so going into Superman 2025, I just got back from the opening night IMAX screening here in Australia. Going into it, I'd been hearing really strong criticisms against it from critics I respect on both YouTube and TikTok. So I was kind of nervous going into the movie, all right? The criticisms were concerning me. And as I was watching the movie, I was like, okay, I can kind of see how you got there, but I completely disagree. All right. Going into this movie, I heard people saying, like, oh, it completely skips over the origin story. And as I was watching the movie, I was like, you didn't need it. All right. It's done such a good job of catching you up to speed and dropping you in this new world of Superman where metahumans already exist and all these beefs and rivalries are already established. And I think it was just so fresh and exciting from the jump. Pretty much after the first 10 minutes of this movie, I was completely hooked with the world building and the different characters that was seen up in this new, fresh take on Superman. I absolutely loved it. I am high off this movie. But the whole time I was watching the movie, I just couldn't stop thinking about these strange criticisms. And I do wonder if some critics are starting to lose their touch with modern audiences, right? This movie is reviewing very well with audiences on Letterboxd and Rotten Tomatoes. And I'm really shocked by some of the takes I heard because watching this movie, it's just made with so much love and care and effort. And yes, okay, maybe it's not entirely flawless and perfect. Maybe some jokes don't land. Maybe some action maybe could have been a bit clearer. But these are like real nitpicks I am searching for. All right. Like, this is a really, really great movie. And I just feel like the complaints I'm hearing weren't levied at, say, the new Batman with Robert Pattinson. That's a movie that entirely skips over Batman's origin story. Or Spider-Man Homecoming. That's another one that skips over Spider-Man's origin story. And I'm just really surprised that this version of Superman, that by the end of it has so much heart and interesting kind of directions it takes with the character and the lore. And I genuinely really resonated with the movie emotionally a few times. I just can't believe people are leaving this being like, oh yeah, you know, it didn't follow the comics to a T and it changed this, and Superman, more like Superman and his best friends. Where was the focus on Superman? I'm just a bit surprised, truthfully. I thought the sprawling nature of this movie, how branching it was one of its strengths. I also think there are scenes where character interactions and dialogue are really able to breathe. There is a scene in the trailer you would have seen between Lois and Superman where Lois is being a reporter. Despite the fact that they are already dating in this movie, she still, you know, puts on the role of reporter and interviews her boyfriend, interviews Clark/Superman as if she's trying to be an objective reporter, and he is challenged by this. And the full extended scene of this, genuinely one of the best superhero movie scenes I've seen in such a long time. It is reminding me of the Raimi Spider-Man movies, you know, these scenes where it really delves into the humanity behind these characters. You know, so many superhero properties now are just focused on the spectacle, just focused on the CGI goop and the CGI slop, and the character beats are essentially just Marvel dialogue where they're being snarky at each other. But here, it's actually really a character piece at times, a character piece I thoroughly enjoyed. All right. I think this version of Clark Kent and this version of Superman is interesting. He almost seems more confident as Clark Kent and more uncomfortable and nerdy as Superman. At least I found there were really interesting dynamics at play here. I thought the version of Lois Lane was pitch perfect. She was kind of cool, and not in this way where it's like she's this like perfect hot babe where like the directors are just like, yeah, this is it. She's actually a four-dimensional character. There are conflicts between Lois and Clark that can be sliced multiple different ways. That scene I mentioned before might be my favorite scene in the movie, just because after the conflict ends, you're like, I kind of get why Clark was worked up and had to leave that situation, but also I get where she was coming from. I also think this movie delves into real world conflicts. I'm not going to beat around the bush. This movie is directly commenting on Israel/Palestine. I think that's probably going to bug a lot of people, but at the same time, I thought it was refreshing to watch a superhero movie with a bit of guts, you know, going for it. Whether you agree or disagree, I actually really admired a movie challenging people potentially, you know, actually going for it. And yes, it's maybe Baby's first commentary on this conflict, but I respect it nonetheless, you know? On top of that, I think the extended cast here is fantastic. Again, David Corenswet as Superman is genuinely excellent. Rachel Bronson as Lois Lane is fantastic. Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. I saw a lot of complaints going into this that he was hamming it up. He was too funny. He was too cartoonish. I fundamentally disagree. Yes, he has moments of great humor. Yes, there are some ideas that they play with Lex Luthor here that are really reaching, but to me, he felt like he stepped right out of a comic book. There's some technology he's invented to do with interdimensional travel that might be a bit of a reach for our real world, but this is not the real world. This is a world where metahumans have been around for up to 30 years, I believe. On top of that, yeah, he has some like villainous technology and things that I won't spoil that are pretty out there, and this whole movie is pretty out there. There is a scene towards the middle, maybe 3/4 mark, that's dealing with like a portal and, you know, Superman's dog and 2 new characters that you've been introduced to. And it's a lot. Like, conceptually speaking, it's a lot, but it's a lot in the best way possible. This movie is taking massive swings, all right? Like huge visual swings and just huge conceptual ideas that I really appreciate. I was just so excited to be sitting there in a theater watching something that looked visually exciting, but also was just playing with so many ideas. You know, every 5 to 10 minutes, there was some new concept that I had to wrap my head around in a really fun, exciting way. This movie also sets up the Justice Gang, which is like Baby's first Justice League, and I thought they were really cool too. If you don't know anything, I'm not going to spoil who these people are, but I thought they all provided great action scenes at times and also really great comedic relief. And even saying comedic relief feels strange because half of this movie is essentially a comedy. Like, it is very funny, but at the same time, it's that James Gunn balance where you can go from really funny, really goofy, but for me, it never takes it over the line. Even the most absurd, far out ideas here kind of work because 5 minutes later, that character that was just a joke will do something dark and fucked up, and something so dark that another movie just wouldn't do. You know, another Marvel movie wouldn't do. Thunderbolts was meant to be Marvel's most recent gritty film, and there's something that happens in this movie, you'll know it when you see it, to do with a gun that I was actually genuinely shocked by, and the whole theater was shocked by. There were 2 moments in this movie where my whole theater, you could have heard a pin drop, and I really respect that. So if you guys are excited for Superman, if you are interested in seeing it, I think this will be the superhero movie of the year. Forget Fantastic Four First Steps. I'm sorry. Like, maybe it'll be good, but I'm not very optimistic from the trailers. But this Superman, this is something. Now, if I had to nitpick, all right, I do think towards the back end, I was slightly feeling the length at one point in an action scene. There was some really great action here, all right? Fantastic, well done action. I also love the flying scenes. There are these incredible flying scenes where Superman is flying with urgency, and as a result it's focusing on him and the camera's shaking and there's like dust particles hitting his face, and it's not cool, it's not glamorous, it just looks like someone who's essentially like getting hurt by how fast they're flying. It's a very cool visualization, but not very like visually cool. I appreciate how chaotically it was filmed. On top of that, there's that action scene you've probably seen in the trailer in the football stadium that I thought was excellently well shot, the way it was cutting between characters, and that scene I mentioned with a gun before, which I won't spoil, but between Lex Luthor, Superman, and someone else, the way it was cutting from character to character to character was just so well shot, so exciting. If I had to nitpick, towards the end, there were just some moments where I was a bit like, all right, we can tighten this action sequence up. I don't want to spoil it, but there was a brief moment where I was getting a feel for that sort of like Zack Snyder-y, this is kind of too much, kind of the way the end of Man of Steel did. But at the same time, I also think this movie, I was surprised by, actually lent into some of Zack Snyder's best action tendencies. So even though for a brief moment, for a brief 1 or 2 minute window, it kind of lent into Zack Snyder's most chaotic CGI goopiness, there was also a moment where I felt like, oh, this is reminding me of the really exciting, like the Smallville fight in Man of Steel, which I actually always really liked. So yeah, overall, this is a really solid movie, and I'm surprised the flack it's copying. Now, if you've enjoyed this review so far, please consider getting a membership to this channel through Patreon or YouTube memberships. I do a fortnightly podcast where I talk about every single movie or show I've watched in that given fortnight. Check out the links below. Now, let's get into spoilers. 3, 2, 1. So spoiler talk, I absolutely love the reveal here that Superman's parents were actually low-key kind of evil or not great or whatever you want to call it. There is a plot arc here around what feels like a deep fake of a message that Superman's parents sent him, all right? And the idea, the reveal that it actually wasn't a deep fake. You know, there's this moment where Lex Luthor turns to a character and says, "We actually didn't fake that. That's exactly what they said." And the delivery here from Nicholas Hoult was excellent because I was like, I think he's telling the truth. We've seen him bullshit throughout this movie. That felt like earnest. That felt like it was coming from a place. And the payoff here is both a heartbreaking one and a heartwarming one. You have to watch Superman reckon with the reality that he was sent here to destroy Earth. This is probably a change from the comic books, at least from what I understand. I haven't read every Superman comic ever, but this is a dark twist on a classic story, at least from my understanding. But the heartwarming payoff you get here, where now he goes to his fortress of solitude and instead wraps himself around with kind of memories. His adoptive parents was beautiful. It was a beautiful, beautiful ending. On top of that, now that I can talk about spoilers, there were things I didn't want to give away. Absolutely. The moment where this movie locked into gear for me was one, that fight between Lois and Clark. I was like, all right, we're definitely cooking here. This is giving Spider-Man 2 Sam Raimi vibes. But more so, I absolutely loved that section with the giant kaiju monster, this little kaiju monster that starts and grows massive, all right, huge. And I loved when Green Lantern was fighting this giant kaiju. And then you get that classic icky James Gunn violence where he's set up this like contraption that just jabs the kaiju's eyes. Sick. Awesome. Loved it. And I loved the gag around Green Lantern constantly picking the most kind of roundabout, inefficient ways to handle these action scenes, handle these monsters. There's this great visual gag halfway through the movie where Lois and Clark are having a serious discussion. In the background, there's just this floating giant eyeball with tentacles, and you just see Green Lantern bashing it with a baseball bat in the background. Like he could just kind of create a giant sword and just instantly just form it inside this creature, but no, he's getting a baseball bat and just bonk it on its head. Mr. Terrific was absolutely fantastic, stole the show. That action sequence with the force field was great. Typical James Gunn, you know, he loves those scenes where it's like a camera fixed and goes around. I would have loved maybe an action scene similar to the one in Guardians 3, that hallway fight. But this is really solid. This is really solid. Now, where the only knock I really have on this film was two things. I forgot to mention the spoiler-free section, but the music for the most part is fantastic, but most of that music compliment I'm going to give is the original score. That dun 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 dun. The one I didn't love, the music I didn't love was this sort of music that was the transitionary scenes, all right? There were these moments between scenes where like characters would kind of be walking to like a ship and the music would just be very generic, just dung 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 dung. Kind of sounds like something you could whip up on GarageBand with like 30 minutes. You know, like it wasn't great. It wasn't great. But aside from that, the movie looked fantastic. It was just these little moments of music that I didn't love. I loved Superdog. Loved this little Superman's dog, the one he was like looking after. Loved the reveal that Supergirl's around, and what great casting! What great casting! The woman from Sirens and House of the Dragon, I think her name is Millie Alcock, I think, but she's awesome. She's awesome. Great casting. Again, I loved the Justice Gang. I loved all these action scenes. The only other thing where this movie lost me maybe slightly was, again, I loved that stadium fight scene. I thought it was so exciting. Loved how it was shot. Love all this like great action with this engineer character, the one that could like morph her hands into like sharp discs. It was just great. But the thing I didn't love was the reveal of the Superman clone. I didn't mind the initial reveal of the Superman clone. I just felt at this point we only had 15 minutes of the movie left. And I feel like you almost could have saved that or made this the main villain for the last hour. I just think when it was introduced, you couldn't really deal with too much around the existential crisis that would come from witnessing your clone. Loved the visual look of this clone. Loved the fact that it looked like a dark Superman. I'm just wondering if you maybe used this idea a bit too early in this iteration of Superman. I think this could have been a whole great idea for the sequel. There is a chance, you know, I hate this whole thing of like, if we didn't see the character's head literally explode into 1,000 pieces, they might be alive. There is a chance they'll bring back evil Superman. But I don't know. I kind of wish we got more of him. I think as it stands, he was just introduced a little too late. Didn't have a massive impact on me the way maybe evil clone Logan did in the film Logan. But it was good enough. It was good enough. And the big thing here is I loved them fighting. I loved when it was brutal, tactile, punch, arm break sort of fighting. But one thing I would change is maybe just when they were like flying around, the camera work got a little shaky. The CGI looked a little strained, truthfully. And it was just reminding me of some of the worst stuff from the Snyderverse. And I'm someone who quite likes Man of Steel. There's actually a lot of good stuff in there. The score of Man of Steel is fantastic. I think Henry Cavill was always a good Superman, and I think Zack Snyder knows how to be a really good director when he wants to be. So there are things in both Batman vs Superman and Man of Steel that I really, really love, but sometimes the action would get a little incomprehensible and loud and dumb. And unfortunately, Superman did not set a foot wrong for the entire runtime up until that final fight between the two Clarks, just briefly. There was just a moment where I was like, this is looking a little shitty. And on top of that, the world kind of splitting in two was just a little like, all right, let's get it going. I can't really explain it better than that. I've just seen so many big Marvel and DC movies where like the world is ending. Love Nicholas Hoult here. I loved Lex Luthor in this. I mean, it's always the way, right? But I love this inferiority complex and the way it was written and the way he thought he could, it's like, I am intimidated by Superman's existence. I am intimidated by the fact that he is physically stronger than me. I need to beat him with my brains, but even then he doesn't. Superman also outsmarts him on a brainiac level, and I liked that. I liked the two monologues they took out on each other, and that's another big thing. Like, yes, maybe it's a little on the nose. Yes, maybe it's a little easy. Like, yes, all the stuff that's clearly an allegory to Israel-Palestine is babies first, Israel-Palestine, but you know what, guys? It is a comic book movie that's trying to be a comic book movie. And I think kids are going to love this. I think adults are going to love this. My crowd loved it. But I also think at the end of the day, sometimes superheroes are meant to be simple stories. If I'm watching something like Matt Reeves' Batman that's trying to be more in line with a David Fincher film, yeah, I'm probably going to demand a little more subtlety and a little more smartness. Look at The Penguin, for example, that miniseries. If I'm watching something like Kick-Ass or Logan, I'm going to be looking for something more subversive, more challenging. But when I'm watching Superman, I actually admire that it's taking big risks and swings with its subject material. I also like that it's been simple to digest at the same time for younger audience members. If I was a kid, I think I genuinely would have loved this. And as an adult, I really, really enjoyed this. So I am truthfully very surprised by some of the negative reception I've seen around this movie. I think it's a shame. I do think this is a lot better than Thunderbolts. And I'm not even like a massive DC fan, but love the Batman. Love this version of Superman, and I'm really excited for James Gunn's DC universe, genuinely. At the end of this movie, I was like, fuck, if I was Marvel, I would be worried, because this looks sick to me. While I've got you, just some things I forgot to mention. I absolutely loved when Lex Luthor had the dog hostage and had the dog chasing like this VR, like in this perpetual VR, chasing Superman squirrels. Hilarious gag. I also liked the literal talking monkeys he had that was sending out hate tweets to Superman. Like, funny gag and like just on the line of being too stupid, but it was all right. It was executed well enough. I also loved, I was talking before about just all this crazy, insane visual imagery, but I absolutely loved the sequence where Superman was drowning in like this pixelated goop in this river that was about to get sucked out into a black hole, and he's drowning trying to save this alien baby. It actually felt heroic. Like he was willing to drown trying to help this baby he barely even knows for this floating head Martian guy. Like, it was sick. I loved it. I loved all the crazy visualization going on, like this CGI head floating around with tentacles, and it was awesome. It was genuinely awesome. And again, Mr. Terrific also commenting, being like, what the fuck are we looking at here? Also, while we're on grotesque imagery, I loved all the nanites invading Superman's eyes and mouth and all his orifices, and him having to like vomit it up was just cool. The Russian roulette scene with Lex Luthor, come on, man. Like an actual dark moment in a superhero movie. Every single time we watch a Russian roulette scene, we get minimum 4 or 5 spins in a 6-chamber gun. This one goes off on number 2. And you could hear a pin drop in my theater. On top of that, I wasn't loving the Lex Luthor's girlfriend arc, but then the twist towards the end where she's actually like trying to send the information out, people actually got scared when she got overheard. And I would have liked if they took it further and actually like killed her off, but they didn't. But given the fact they did the Russian roulette scene earlier, I'll let it slide. I mean, look at Thunderbolts. They had that incredible dark moment where that girl got whoomped out just to undo it, you know? So I respect a movie actually leaning into darkness. So this is getting my tick of approval. This is easily the best superhero movie I've seen in ages. I am feeling a 4.5 out of 5. 9 out of 10. This is as good as it gets, guys. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and have a lovely day.